fair one.
Okay. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Can you hear me all right? Yeah?
Yeah.
So, the title of the discussion is Art School or Self-Taught? The Impact of Labels on Artists in the 21st Century. And this is to accompany the Circus Terminal exhibition, which is downstairs. Have some of you seen that, the exhibition? You can have a look, this is the last stage. Okay, so the reason for this discussion is because the exhibition downstairs has combined taught artists, artists that have been in art school, and artists that are known as outsider artists or self-taught. And we thought it'd be interesting to explore these labels because commonly we don't usually have exhibitions that feature both sorts of artists, so we wanted to try something different. And we want to know what the future of these labels are going to have with artists using the internet, because a lot of self-taught artists are now promoting themselves through the internet. And so I'm just going to introduce the panel to you. I'm Miranda, and I'm an artist in the exhibition and London Curator for the exhibition. This is Dr. Westbrook. She's the founder of the Neo-Outsider Art Movement. Andrew Stahl, who is an artist exhibiting in the exhibition, and he is the head of Undergraduate Painting at Slade School of Art, UCL. And Roland has come from France to be with us, who is also exhibiting in the exhibition. He's a Neo-Outsider artist and curator. So I thought I'd start things off by reading you a quote from James Brett, founder of the Museum of Everything in London, who was asked at the 20th Annual Outsider Art Fair in New York City what the term outsider art meant to him, and then asked the panel to respond to how labels have affected the art world based on their own particular background and experiences. And we'll take it. Outsider art does not exist. There is no such thing as an outsider because outsiders are necessarily defined by insiders. And we're not arrogant enough to call anybody an outsider because we're inside, aren't we? And as for art, well, art doesn't exist. We made it up hundreds of years ago to separate the high and the low, to dispossess people without a voice of that voice. What you see in this space are those voices coming out unedited. It's the same as Occupy Wall Street. It's brilliant because it's direct and honest, and generally it's not thinking as much about the market. These are works of astonishing privacy, and that's what makes them terrific. But truthfully, there is no such thing as outside art. As soon as people realise that and get rid of that terminology and just understand everything as making, then we'll all be a lot better for it. So, Melissa, would you like to go first?
Ooh. Well, I think that outsider art does exist, but I think we have to be very specific about the way that we use it. I'm sort of fairly old school, so I would actually take someone like Roger Cardinal as my basis. And it was a translation for the French art brut, which you can tell us a lot more about.
Sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry, I can't actually hear what
I'm sorry.
you're saying.
I was just saying that I take the very traditional view of what outsider art is as a translation of the French art brut, which was a movement that was identified in the 40s. And I think that you have to distinguish between outsider art as a category, which refers back to art brut, which has its own rules, and its artists have to live and create art in a certain way. But I think there's also another type of outsider artist, a much more general term. This is someone who is, they feel that they have no affinity with the art establishment, they work on the margins, but they may have been to art school, they may not. it doesn't really matter. It's that they consider themselves an outsider artist. So I think there's two separate things going on here.
And outsider art is a huge umbrella term for lots of different types of art as well, which some outsiders might resent being more marginalised intellectual figure.
True.
Okay. Do you hear from Andrew?
Sure. I think both terms, insider and outsider, are absolutely dreadful. And I think that the idea of the taught artist is really dreadful as well, and that term, because that's not what happens in art school. And I wrote in a reply to an email a definition of an insider as being exposed to formal teaching and culture. Well, who in this world is not exposed to culture unless they have no TV, no computer, they don't go to films, they don't go to art galleries. So everyone is exposed to culture. Most people are taught at school. And how do outsiders know what goes on in art school if they haven't been there? That's the other really, crucial point. I think art schools are fantastic places. I think the term insider is, the only time I think it's used these days is to talk about insider trading, like illegal activity, preference thing. I've never heard insider ever in all my years in the art world to talk about. I think outsider is a commercial term. I think a few people have thought, I know what, we'll create this noble savage, this person who's not been exposed to our culture, who's like a visionary, who is brutal, in the wilderness, and So I think I'm very sarcastic about it. I do think there is a space for what is termed the traditional means that you're talking about as outsider. I think there is some work that could fit into that. But I think it's quite interesting. I was reading that The Outsider by Camus is the most popular book for teenage men who want to have a sort of existentialist sort of zip inside their hearts. So I'm being very cynical. And I think the thing about the insider is the idea, it's a passive model, but the insider is exposed to radiation, that's bombarded context, is no longer able to think for themselves. They're like a victim. Rather than as, which my experience is, very thirsty young artists trying to understand the world around them and meet other artists to discuss and make art. That's what happens at art school. They get into a fantastic discussion. Art schools are huge arguments, and not every art school. There's some dreadful ones around. I'm talking about good art schools like the one I work in, and I think nobody agrees. None of the staff agrees what's good art. It's a massive debate which young artists, very excited, come, participate, present their work, discuss their work, and they form their own opinion about what they want to make. And I think there's a terrific demand for places. We have 1,400 applicants for 35 places. That gives you an example of the excitement they generate. So they're certainly, the students are in a very powerful position, and they're certainly not told what to make. So that's the first thing. I think both terms are victim terms. The outsider, they're victims of society, they're rejected, they are alone, they are, there's that side, and the insider is this poor victim of teaching. And
Andrew, can I just interrupt
move on.
ask Jeff to respond to that?
Okay, can I just say one last thing and then I'll shut up. I think that there is the traditional idea of outsider. When there was that fantastic outsider show at the Hayward, there was a particular kind of obsessional focus and extraordinary type of art produced, which was classified as outsider in that sense, and that was done by the person you met. I mean, that term was mentioned by Roger Cardinal, and I think that is the interesting part of that term. And last thing, I don't think what Knock is doing is actually outsider. I think it's relational aesthetics. I think it's brilliant. It's about the social dimension of art, bringing together people. I don't think it's about, I'm a lonely romantic in the hills, which is, yeah, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to agree that the term outsider has been used in a sort of romantic manner, and that many people don't understand labels and things like that, and I think that it brings people to further not understand what art is about, and maybe discourage some people to actually go and see the shows, feel and see the paintings. But however, we can't escape a world of definitions in which outsider art has been defined already as being a translation, an English translation of art, what Buffet in France tried to make, which was really basically the art of the excluded, and namely the madmen that were creating art without having the notion of being artists. So now, in our society, we have a lot of media that make you realize that if you create art, that you are an artist. If you don't realize it, you have to live in a cave or on an island or somewhere like this. I want to point out that if you are, so you can either go by the definition of outsider art or the feeling of outsider art, which would be that you feel outside a certain type of art world that maybe doesn't exist. There is a sort of fantasized art world that we imagine, but that I personally, as an artist, have never met really. We are all people, and in French the term outsider art has been translated as art singulier. That's what we are all about. We are singularities. Artists are idiosyncrasies. They are islands. Sorry, that's the book, yeah, well, so they can't help making it official, because this is a very, very pretentious book, you know, not because I'm in it. That's a book that is about art singulier, and it is called the Bible, the Bible of outsider art. So it should be something official. What's in it? A lot of people who have very different universes, and that you are encouraged to discover as universes. So what we call the outside world is in fact the inside. Outsiders are insiders in the way that they are showing what is inside their mind, they are showing their emotions, and maybe labels are a protection for artists, but I truly think...
Can I just say,
yes.
I think that France has a very particular problem with its history, as we were saying the other day, in that they've never recognised, the establishment has never supported their own artists. Very few of the very famous French artists, the ones that we all know, actually were supported. They were rejected by the French. The Impressionists were rejected, Gauguin was rejected, Braque was rejected, Matisse was partly rejected, Picasso was rejected, though he's Spanish, but he was rejected while he was young. So I think there's a particular way that the French have always had to resist the establishment. I think it's slightly different from this country, but I think there is an art world. I think that is a very economic function, you know, and very important.
Even an art business world.
An art business world that is very, very powerful. It's worth billions. Yeah. And it's where everyone's putting their money because of the fragile economy.
And that's where labels come into play, because labels are, people love what they can recognize. So if you say, oh, what is this painting? Some people maybe don't dare to show their taste, thinking maybe it's bad taste, maybe they don't know what they would rely to. And if you're told, oh, this is outsider art, this is in, this is trendy, so I'm going to buy outsider art.
So
this is another trendy label.
Who's making these labels then?
Gallerists and curators.
Galleries, yes. So they come capitalising on
They
artists.
are, yes, they are, of course.
But do labels actually help artists?
No, for example, you just said that artists are, outsiders, are concerned with their emotions, are concerned with this and that. But all artists are concerned with that. All good artists. I mean, what counts as the good art you make? Not the label. I agree with what you're saying, but all artists are concerned with their imagination, with their inside world, as well as their outside world, with their feelings, as well as the material quality of what they produce. I actually think the definition is purely commercial. I think, and it's a recent definition. In England, outsiders was in the 70s it was introduced.
But maybe by having the label, like they can identify with each other, like form a collective, and they wouldn't feel so
What if it's
alone.
their own labels? If the label comes from the artist, where's the harm?
Well, no, I think artists do have always made their own labels.
Well, if you take the case of Dada, for example,
Yes, exactly.
You have a group of artists who decide to do something different and come from their own will, decide to form a group, a little bit like what we are trying to do. We are trying to do this with uncooked culture, which is a way to, how can I say, excuse my English, but to find another way than the classical art world for another reason than pure ideology, I would say. And this reason is finances. We can't afford to have art managers to go to pay for galleries, some pay-to-play galleries and things like that. But some artists are really talented, and but they won't sell. And anyway, what art, what will remain of art now? We will know that in 50, 60, 70, 80 years. It is too soon to know. What can we say about art in these last years? We can say that we know roughly what pop art would be, because now Warhol has been dead for now 30 years now, so we know roughly, but
Slightly less.
Slightly less, but beyond that, I think we're in a blur.
Yeah. But again, when you look at Warhol, it doesn't matter whether it's insider or outsider. He changed the world. He changed the art world. And so it's not a matter whether you think he's good or not, but the whole world, the whole practice of art has not been the same since. I think that's a really important thing to remember, and I think also, not just about Warhol, but about artists that have a major impact on that discussion, the debate that is the art world, the art, what's happening. And I think the danger of saying I'm not interested in that is it's kind of like you're really missing out. So that would be my concern as well for people that didn't want to participate. I think again there are two other big issues. One is like I want to make art for the people. Now it must be accessible. The people are stupid. That's the implication of that statement. People have to follow their vision. They have to make the most brilliant, complicated, passionate, exciting art they can. Not try and make it for the people or interesting or this and that. I think that's another trend. And somebody also mentioned something the other day about conceptual art, as though it's incredibly complex. But conceptual art is just a style. I can put this glass of water there and say this is an art world. What a challenge. This is, an art piece. And somebody can say, and there can be a discussion around it. So as we all know, it's a very...
No, this is...
No, yeah, I know. You must say mine is bigger.
No, mine is outside of this one.
Yours is an outsider, it's not on the table.
Yes,
Can I just ask a question? You were saying about people saying that they wanted to make that art accessible.
Yeah.
That's a trend.
I didn't say it's a trend. I said that is, I think, a very erroneous way of thinking.
Yes, yes. Well, I was just wondering, because I've never kind of come across that feeling in people who talk about being outside artists, because the whole thing about outside artists, so it's difficult, but the whole thing about outside artists is that they're not doing it for anybody or anything anyway.
So they're not trying to make their work accessible.
Which definition of outsider are you using?
Well, no, that's why I was fumbling, because I'm not really,
Yes.
I'm not really using any particular definition of outsider artists here. I'm being very generic to think about people who might think that they're linked in some way to outsider artists. People who consider their work to fit somewhere in that area.
You see, I think that's true of someone like Henry Darger,
Yes.
visionary,
Yes.
who's absolutely unbelievably amazing.
Yes, yes.
You know, and many
Yes,
other people, I mean, I would accept that. But I think there's a whole load of people that call themselves outside. I'm not talking about people here, the brilliant people in the show, I think. But I'm just talking about there are people, I've met people who call themselves outsiders, who actually say the trouble with the art world is it's so complicated, and you know, ordinary people can't understand what's going on. It's not true.
No,
people have to actually try and understand what's going on, and artists have to try and make the best work that they possibly can.
Yes, and also I looked at so-called outsider art.
There's quite a few points, it's Andrew, isn't it?
Yes.
There's quite a few points I could take you up on, but I mean, just to take one point, this thing about accessibility. You said that making yourself accessible, or putting an emphasis on accessibility, seemed to imply that the people you're trying to reach are stupid. Now, if I might draw
I didn't quite say putting an emphasis.
You did actually say that.
No, I said that people who say they want to make art accessible implies, if they want to make their art accessible because they want people to understand it,
yes.
The implication is, first of all, they're a lot cleverer than other people, and secondly, that the general public, who they want to understand the work, are stupid.
Well, I can't see much difference between what you've just said and what
I think it is.
Well,
Same thing.
Yeah,
you put the emphasis.
No, if I can get to the point, I think it's the same thing. Anyway, look, the point is, if I might draw a parallel, because I think quite often, in order to understand what's going on culturally, it's actually good to look at things cross-culturally a bit. Like, if one makes a comparison in literature, for example, I mean, George Orwell was a great novelist who basically, one of his main aims was to make what he had to say, which he thought was important, accessible. He wrote in the clearest, most precise and plainest English so that anybody could understand him. And he was not thereby looking down on people or making any kind of hint of implication that the people he was trying to reach were stupid. He was basically trying to sort of be on other people's level, to make oneself accessible, whether it's through art, literature or music, is not to be seen.
But you were trying to make yourself on other people's level. He was in a different level.
No, but look, he was great, and if you read George Orwell, there are so many novels, for example, that you can read that are difficult to get into. They might have something interesting to say, but I mean, they're hard work, and a lot of people might not get into them.
Can I answer that? Okay. No, I think there's a difference between literature and art.
No, of course. There is, but the point, I am dealing with this point about accessibility. And I think that to make yourself accessible so that you're understood is not looking down on people. And I feel absolutely clear about that, right? And I think you're completely wrong when you say
can I answer
that it implies stupidity.
Can I answer that? I think, can I answer that? Because that's been addressed to me, and yes, I find that as a total misunderstanding of what I said, because making yourself understood is not the same as making yourself accessible. Okay.
That is rubbish.
Accessible
I think we should leave the questions and answers till the end, just so we can proceed, and then you can carry on. Sorry, thank you.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
What do you mean by accessible then?
Well, I think what's being said here is, of course, it's great when things are clear. I actually don't think there has to be a meaning in art to be delivered. I'm actually really interested in art that is about nonsense and nothing. Okay, so for a start,
like that,
for example, so I don't think it necessarily has to be a simple story to deliver. Okay, I think accessible means make it very, very easy to understand, and I think to be, what was the other word used? To be clear. Sorry, what was the word used? Sorry? No, not articulate. It was about to deliver the meaning very directly. If there is a meaning, I think that's clarity. I think that's really important. Whether it's a red square on a blank canvas, I think delivering what you're intending to do.
But isn't the difference between outsiders and artists that go to art schools is learning art history? That's one of
the defining points. But I think it's also a general awareness that there is an art world, that there is art history, that there are art styles out there.
Yeah, because a lot of people that go to art school. Yeah.
Sorry, Miranda.
Yeah, because I went to art school and I got more and more into the conceptualism, and people, like general public, when they see a painting, they go, oh right, I get that, it's visual, and maybe I do a glass of water and they'll go, but I don't understand. But maybe I saw something by Michael Craig Martin and I got inspired by it because I know the art history of it. So other artists that know about Michael Craig Martin would go, oh, we get that, we see what you're doing, but other people wouldn't get it, and I think that's good. Yeah.
Would it be any different? I mean, if this is your artwork here, would it be any less, or have any less aesthetic value if it was created by someone who didn't go to art school? If you just look at it as an object? I think that's one of the big difficulties with outsider art, and I use that as the art category. It has to be, it's such a strict definition, and you have to create it in a very specific way, and I think that's to his detriment. You should just be looking at the object.
I agree.
So you're founder of the neo-outsider art movement.
I am.
Do you want to explain why you started that off?
I started it actually because of Jeff Roland. When I met Jeff and we were talking about what outsider art was, and I was looking at his work and I was thinking, but how does this actually fit in? And it occurred to me that it was erroneous looking at art in such a black and white fashion, and that there was a lot of art that was out there that was neither insider nor outsider, and that there needed to be something in the middle. But this was not something which I created and went to seek artists out. I was literally given a term to what was happening, and there's a lot of activity on the internet, through Facebook, through social networking. These artists were all getting together and exchanging views. And I think the difference between neo-outsider, outsider and insider is that basically neo-outsiders take from both the insider and the outsider traditions and create something quite different. So I get it's a middle point. This is the best way to explain.
They also get an access, which is, I was saying, we don't live in caves anymore. So now talking about art school, you say art history could be the difference, but I haven't been to any art school and have no intention to. But I think I can open a book, I can Google anything, I can go to museums, and I highly respect the history of art. And but I've made my own choices, and it's a sort of non-discipline of some people don't want to walk in the lines, and maybe some people are afraid of being in within the limits of an art school, even if the limits are very far. I think art is about freedom. Art is about expressing something that you would in any case, even if you even if you were not conscious of doing it, you would do art because it is a part of you. It is not a regular job. It is an expression of something that comes from deep in history, that has started in the caves, precisely, to go back to the caves, and where people express a form of spirituality that is linking us all human beings together and making it something else that go, gather, eat, and all this. And there is something that is maybe, if not religious, because I would say that maybe religion would be the first art school that would take spirituality and make it something structured, but not to go this way. I think that artists that feel as artists, outsider, insider, whatever, it is not their call. It's not their call most of the time. Who gives the label? Who creates the labels? Critics.
So what's the difference between new outsider and outsider?
Outsider art has a very strict definition at the beginning as art from the mentally ill. Okay, and then it went to a whole lot of different people. Some people who were not so literate, some people who had been isolated, some people who had been painting all their lives, and then when they are dead you discover that they have been painting all their lives. Some people like Danger, who are discovered as artists, basically who are not conscious of being artists.
Can I take
yes,
go to the point? I don't think the difference.
Just to answer, just in a minute to answer, a neo outsider art would be those people as confronted to our world where you can't escape the media, as a blessing, as a fatality, both. But you can change it, and that makes us related to each other, between artists and the people in a world of communication. Please.
Can I add as well? Sorry, may I just add to that? The other thing as well is that neo-outsiders, some of them are taught, some of them are not. I have a couple of artists who were, well-trained at art school and turned their back on, the establishment, and decided to paint in the outsider style, and decided to sort of, with a very austere cut-off life. In fact, Julia Ceci, whose work is downstairs, is one of those artists.
I was very interested to use the word well-trained, because I've never known anybody leaving art school who said they're well-trained.
Yes.
I mean, well-trained at what? Like horses? Okay, or taught. I've never known anyone who says, I was taught at art school. They're not trained. Okay, the next thing, is I don't think the difference between art school and non-art school is art history. There's a hell of a lot more than that. Okay, I'll give you an example. Every Tuesday in art school, in the one I work in, perhaps 5 students put their work on the wall, and maybe 30 students are there, from different, maybe some sculptors, some media students, some painters, whatever, and there may be some things on the floor too, and they all have a massive discussion about what they're trying to do, and it's very exciting. They will argue furiously, as you can see how they argue. They argue, it's quite intense, it's a fantastic thing, and they have that 30 times in a year for 4 years. I mean, so they get a real sense of how other people respond. So for example, a typical thing is, you're put to work there, and as the artist, you can't say anything. People on the floor respond to it.
Excuse me, what is the objective of the discussion?
Let me finish.
Yeah,
you put the thing on the wall.
Well,
when you put the thing on the wall, everybody responds to it. You're not allowed to introduce it with words. So the point of that is that actually what is there, you are seeing the effect on people of what is there. You're not saying, in this thing, I'm telling a story of this, I'm trying to do this. You don't introduce it, you don't add words. It's all based in the object, so the people there are responding to what's on the wall. So the purpose of it is to get a sense of clarity, going back to your point, how are they delivering what they want to? At the end, they're saying, okay, so what were you trying to do? And so they then say, and it's a very interesting process to see whether their intention is matched by the floor response, for example. That's just one tiny thing that goes. Other things that happen.
If you don't know what your intention is,
can also be the case. There are many people who are trying this, trying that, and not sure what they're doing, and that happens as well.
It's constructive feedback.
Yeah. The other thing. So you have the argument. You do get art history, but you have social networking. So it's interesting, the very thing that this exhibition is doing, and the very typical discussion this is a discussion that happens in art schools. So everybody here has probably come to this because they want to talk about making art. And I'm probably wrong. First to stand up, everything I've said is absolutely rubbish. But the point is, I've enjoyed telling you my opinion, and I think the whole point about, and I think you may be right, but the whole point about it is it's really enjoyable to discuss. If you're passionate about art, to talk about it, to talk about what's right. So that is the point. And so the thing, for example, that Knock has set up is a brilliant thing. What's so interesting is that exists for students leaving. They get together, they make shows. I'm invited to them every week. They get spaces, they get alternative spaces, blown down buildings, everything like that. They go, they make shows, and they interact exactly what Knock is doing.
So maybe self-taught people are more in isolation.
They are in isolation compared to art school. They don't have contemporaries.
So maybe the internet is a blessing to them because then they get to discuss and share their work with each other.
I think it's fantastic.
So that's why Neo-Outsider had to be retermed.
That's why it's fantastic. I think the internet is a huge thing. I mean, I think it's really interesting. 1 year at art school, one of the most brilliant students became a gallerist called Harold Street. It's like one of the trendiest, most art world based in Frieze every year and other art everything. And 3 of his fellow students became his main artists. And I walked into Frieze. I said, "Hi, how's it going?" I sold 37 paintings during the Frieze, of one, So it's like, actually they've got their own network, which can be commercially successful. Not every time, but the commercial thing is not something that we're considering here, not something I'm interested in, but, except I'm always interested in money, but not as a direct part of this discussion. And I think that's the key thing.
That's another...
They said, and critics, one of the year became a critic, who writes for a national newspaper. So they were all set up.
But do you think that changes your artwork? If
not just being an outsider.
Commercially.
No, I'm not talking about commercially. I'm not talking about.
Can I ask you something? Is Frieze for outside or inside artists?
Well, there is an outsider. Usually an outsider part of it.
It seems to me that the financial gains that people from Frieze get makes them the inside rather than the outside.
I don't think Frieze is about art at all, actually, in either platform. It's more about money.
It's about money completely.
Did you say that when nobody gets taught in art school and nobody leaves being taught?
Taught is too passive, no. I think people...
So is that surprising what kind of junk that you produce at the end of 3 years?
Well,
because I can tell you, I went to art school, and where I pick you up is because...
Which one did you go to?
I don't have to give any names, but I went to art school, and I could produce my own work, which I'm passionate with, but I was not going to get the credits to produce my own works. So on one level they say you can do what you like, you can express yourself, which is a contradiction. On the second hand they say, but you can only do it this way, because this is the way that's going to get you your credits.
But then you went to a really bad answer.
No, it's quite well known. But you don't even have to say it at the top, because you can see it. That when the students were producing their art, at the first of the session, the first time when children were producing their art, and they were coming up with some really fantastic work, until they began the manipulation of being a conceptual artist began to wind its way through to the students. And I remember the start, one of the tutorials said, the head of the tutorial, she said, when we had the first meeting in the second week in the second term, she said, "Have you all got it yet?" And we kind of looked at each other and said, "Got what? Is an art? Have we got what?" But when let me finish. When I realised what she was saying, have we all been brainwashed into producing the kind of work that is acceptable in mainstream?
Okay, I can see why you won't tell me the name of the art school, because it's an appalling art school.
It is irrelevant. It is irrelevant because we went, no, it's not, because when I was actually thinking of going higher in terms of my art education, we went, it was the thing they have at the Highbury, Islington Green, where they had all the art lectures from all over the place, art students, and we asked them the very same question: what exactly do you do in art school? What exactly do you teach in art school? And they all came up with no, we don't all teach. We're more and more in level of actually, art, contemporary art. We don't actually conceptual art. We teach a lot of make students aware of conceptual art and get them to guide. But the point which I really want to make, just a second. One of the main points, and we'll show you go on as well. One of the main points I want to make that when you go to art school, it is not about expressing yourself the way you want to express yourself. It's about expressing yourself, but the way they want you to express yourself. Because the way they want you to express yourself is where they don't. No, it's not. Because I wouldn't get the praise stream of my own work. I wasn't going to get the marks.
Can I tell you, I've taught in about 17 art schools, and I know the difference between good and bad ones. I'm also external assessor in 3 at the moment, and that doesn't happen. So I don't know when you went to art school. If that system happened in an art school now, they would be discredited.
It was 2 years ago.
Okay, well, you're not telling us which art school. I'm really interested.
It's irrelevant to say what art school.
Well, of course you can't. Well, that's right.
We know it goes to another art school, because I know a lot of these students who did go on to do university courses, and we still keep in touch. And they say it's boring, it's a waste of time, but it can give us an easy degree.
Yeah, well, you see, you're arguing without giving any reference, so there's not much I can't really refute. That's a very bad experience. I'm really sorry that you had that experience.
I've looked at a lot of the stuff on the internet too.
I'm really sorry. I think that's so sad that you had that experience. We say, our job, and this is on our website, and which is on most similar things in good art schools, is our duty is to develop the individual brilliance, imagination and talent that the person brings with them. Okay? That's what our thing is, not about us imposing something on them. And in fact, as I said, none of us agree anyway. So it's one person, we don't even, when it comes to marking, we don't give the same even category of marks. So, you know, it's absolutely not like that, in my experience.
When you say you don't give the same category of marks, how can you do without sort of standards that apply equally to everybody?
We don't.
Well, you say you don't give the same category of marks, so I don't quite understand.
Well, we have what's called a parity board, where things are argued out. We have an external examiner. We have 3 external examiners. This is how it works in all good art schools. And in fact, to be accredited, it has to work that way. So the art school you're talking about can't be accredited because it would fail. Anyway, I think that's enough.
Okay,
can I just say, didn't somebody once get a first at the Slade for putting a children's a school desk in a playground?
What's a what? Sorry, a school?
Yes.
A school desk.
A school desk in a playground.
Yeah, as part of their...
Well, that would sort of go against the idea that if that was the case, not when I was there, but if that was the case, then it would go against something that Jeff said, which was about limits. I think you're right, there are absolutely no limits about what you're allowed to do in art school. I mean, Damien Hirst is hardly limited, is he?
But don't you think if there are no limits, there can be no standards, there can be no sort of chaos, everything disintegrates?
I thought that sounds like outside.
If there are no standards.
I'm sort of aware, I think I'm talking too much, so I'd like to shut up, but I'm going to say, I don't think that having no limits, makes it, I think it's great there are no limits. What would define the limits? Then you'd be back to what the person next to you was saying.
You don't think you need
which is their limit. So I think I want to stop.
Can we just have a break now for 15 minutes?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, refocus because maybe the talk is not so much about criticizing art schools or not because I think we have much to say about art without referring it to art school. Me having been to no art school, maybe I have things to say at all, but I am still interested to know why do people feel the need to go to art schools? When do they feel?
For the same reason that we've come here today, for our actual chance to talk about it. Yeah. You don't talk about art at private views or in galleries or with friends, or even over the internet. You're going to get praise over the internet. It's something like this in actual positive discussions and arguments. It's really refreshing. We're really enjoying this.
Thank you. So it's just a feeling of unity or a we feeling.
Yeah, it's a chance to let us some steam as well.
So if you want to pursue it as something, that's something you do, surely it insinuates there will be opportunities, and without, obviously it's the the most obvious route to go in terms of without being lost in everything else, which obviously contains opportunities, but you have to kind of find them.
I understand that, but I personally believe that getting lost, being lost, is part of the game, of part of the route that will take you.
But not everyone has a vision either. Some people, which I think actually might be linked in with, for me, I think there's genuine art and there's ingenuine art. And I think a lot of people, I don't know, it's generalizing, but a lot of people in the schools want to find a direction, whereas you do get the odd people who go in knowing, like having their vision already. So, and I think they're the real artists. I mean, I don't know if you can develop, I don't know, but I've lost the point.
I think it can. I think you can find it later on. I think it can.
Where we started.
We were on the genuine art. And
yeah, just before that there was something. I've lost it. No.
I've been an artist for many years without any training, but I was hungry for access to other artists. I really needed to talk to other artists, to share ideas, to kind of show my work, and so I did start to go to college, and I had a time of it, and it was fantastic, and I really, really appreciated it. And now, this has filled the gap that was left after doing that, because this has given me an opportunity again to meet you lot, and, to do things together. Because I do think it's really hard to do things in isolation. I think that's why artists want to go to college. They don't want to be isolated.
It's why perhaps we need labels as well as groups.
Oh yes, I wanted a label. I was so fed up with never being able to say what kind of artist I was. I kind of didn't fit anywhere. So actually to be able to belong to this group, to say I belong to a group, helped me. It's just my personality.
People do ask, what kind of art do you do? That's the first thing you say when they meet you. If you say you're an artist, and you're at a loss, aren't you?
I think what's quite actually, I'll say it later. Have a break.
Yeah, the coffee.
Yes, yeah, we need that break.
Coffee break, 15 minutes, we'll be back. Yeah, this discussion.